my god, I feel like a kid again. Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ryan of Robert Bite, and today I'm here to talk about Rurouni Kenshin. Rurouni Kenshin is a series that's near and dear to my heart. In fact, it's my favorite shonen. I can't say exactly what age I started watching it, but I just know I've loved it for as long as I can remember. So I'm sure you could imagine my excitement when they announced that a new anime would be coming out this month. And in celebration for that, I've decided to talk about one of my favorite moments in the series. It serves its purpose by allowing Kenshin to finally learn the last Hiten Mitsurugi style move, but it also presents a lesson that I think us the viewer can apply to our own lives. But before I jump into the training, I want to talk about Kenshin. Kenshin Himura has a dark and blood-soaked past. Raising his sword in the name of the emperor, he would go on to bring in a peaceful era for Japan. During the time of the Bakumatsu War, he was responsible for many political assassinations, earning himself the name Batosai the Manslayer and becoming the greatest imperial assassin. Keep in mind that he was only a teenager at this time, so the fact that he accomplished as much as he did was astounding. But at the same time, think about how it must have felt to detach yourself from your emotions and then go on to take countless lives so easily at such a young age. I don't want to go too in depth with Kenshin's days of slicing through people like butter, but it's crucial to bring that up just to have an understanding for Kenshin's character and also the current state of the world. In the beginning of the story, Kenshin is nothing but a rurouni, which means a wandering samurai. He travels from place to place helping anyone that needs assistance. This serves as an act of atonement for all the killing he did in his manslayer years. During the early stages of the story, Kenshin is shown to really care for others, and he's willing to endanger his own life for them if need be. He really doesn't come off as someone that takes people's lives, but I mean, then again, sometimes I don't come off as that nigga, but you know. Throughout the stories, villains from the past who want to fight Batosai keep appearing, one after another. And as the story progresses, he struggles with holding back the urge to let the manslayer inside take over. Nah, this man comes off all soft body, but you can really start to tell that he's got that dog in him real quick. Eventually, we see Makoto Shishio, who is the man who took up where Batosai left off, and of course he ends up being an opponent for Kenshin. Kenshin ends up setting out for Kyoto, and while he's there, he goes to learn the final move in the Hiten Mitsurugi sword style. And with that said out of the way, this brings us to one of my favorite parts in all of Rurouni Kenshin, where he needs to get stronger, but he's also fighting to overcome the manslayer within him. Kenshin has always been such an amazing series where one minute you're looking at how amazing the fight scenes are and you're also admiring how skilled everyone is, but then the next minute you'll get an amazing life lesson that you'll be able to take with you after the story's over. But enough about my love of Kenshin, let's go and catch up with him and his master, the great Seijiro Hiko. When Kenshin arrives, he's surprised to see that his master is living his life in a forest as a simple potter. Kenshin asks why he's chosen to become a potter, and Seijiro says he likes it because he doesn't have to conform with social obligations. Oh, and a true genius like him can achieve anything he sets his mind to. I wanted to mention this just because when he says that, just for a second, a split second, he gets this little glimmer that appears right above his teeth. And I won't lie, I miss little touches like that in older series. And I also wanted to highlight this moment because it shows a key thing about Seijiro's personality. He's a very confident man and he believes in himself, and it shows from the very moment we meet him. Kenshin then gets on his hands and his knees as a sign of respect, and he pleads with Seijiro to teach him. And I had to bust out laughing because Seijiro calmly says, "No." "Oh boy, Seiji, baby, come on, teach me something." Kenshin explains to Seijiro that in order to defeat Shishio and not give in to the manslayer inside of him, he needs to become stronger, to which Seijiro lets him know how greedy he is. He explains how Kenshin is very idealistic. The sword is a tool for war. It's nothing but a weapon that is rooted in blood. To be honest, I don't know who I agree with more here, because I'm a person like Kenshin that believes that swords are just tools. They can be used for good or bad depending upon who uses them. But I also understand Seijiro because the vast majority of people only use swords for violence. So I don't know, that's a tough one, but it does go to show how great these characters are written where I can't decide who's right and who's wrong in this situation. Seijiro thinks back on when he was training Kenshin as a teenager and how he had the same temperament as he does now. Feeling if someone in front of him is in pain and sorrow, he's gonna help them. He has to help them. Seijiro makes a parallel with the present situation and the flashback and says that Kenshin has learned nothing. As a matter of fact, let me get in my Seijiro bag real quick. As a result of abandoning my training, you've become what you are now. Your swordsmanship is superior, but it is still that of a 14-year-old, a stupid apprentice whose mind has never matured, who suffered deep wounds that will never heal, on his left cheek as well as in his heart. You then became an unstable swordsman who sways between manslayer and pacifist. And it is your Hiten Mitsurugi style as a consequence of your actions that has had a hand in creating this ghost of the revolution named Shishio. You are correct to say that the Hiten Mitsurugi style has been taught to protect people from times of pain. But that's only the case if it is used as a sword that doesn't belong to any power whatsoever. And because you never understood that, you aren't qualified to learn its final secret. Y'all don't understand. When I heard Seijiro get off like that, I didn't know what to do. It was about 3 a.m. when I was watching this, and I all of a sudden felt like it was way past my bedtime. I was like, sir, yes sir, I'm gonna put the iPad up right now and get right to sleep. Kaoru and Yahiko end up busting into the scene, and as Kenshin is sent to go fetch water by the river, they tell Seijiro about all the time that they spent with Kenshin and what kind of man he's become, and about the fact that he spent the last 10 years wandering around helping people before he met them. When Kenshin comes back, to everyone's surprise, Seijiro changes his mind and decides to teach Kenshin about the final move in the Hiten Mitsurugi sword style. It's not really focused on it all, but I think Kenshin has his friends to thank for Seijiro changing his mind. I thought it was a nice and a subtle friendship moment. Oh, and a side note, the fact that Kenshin is 28 and Seijiro is 43 is nothing short of insane. Yeah, I keep punching in the numbers, but shit's not adding up. Kenshin and Seijiro begin their training, and to be blunt, he mops the floor with Kenshin. Come on, dog, get up off the floor. There's ants down there. In their next duel, he tells Kenshin if he does not connect, he won't teach him the final move. This causes Kenshin to attack him with everything he's got, and he finally puts a scratch on him. Seijiro is such a great character, and it amazes me that he could be so to the point, but also so caring at the same time. He was able to draw those conclusions by just looking at Kenshin and having a short conversation with him. I thought it was a great way to show that no matter how much time passes, he will always know his pupil. And one thing I've always wondered about Rurouni Kenshin is why doesn't Seijiro just defeat the enemies? I mean, he's clearly stronger than Kenshin. That question's never brought up in the story, so just something I was wondering about. The story of how Seijiro and Kenshin met is very important to bring up because it's necessary for Kenshin learning the final Hiten Mitsurugi style move. Kenshin lost his parents early in his life and he was owned by slave traders. One day a group of bandits ended up killing everyone around Kenshin and they are slowly making their way over to him. Thankfully Seijiro shows up and handles the bandits with the quickness. I shouted a little when one of the bandits asked for Seijiro's name, to which he replies, "There's no point in giving my name to someone who's about to die." Time and time again, this man Seijiro just reminds me his name is King Himothy the 13th. Esquire. Also, it's such an amazing moment when he names Kenshin. Kenshin's original name is Shinta, and Seijiro tells him that that's too soft body of a name and he needs something a bit cooler. And right there is the birth of Kenshin Himura. I just think it's so moving that Seijiro not only saved his life, taught him how to defend himself against others, but he also gave him his name that Kenshin uses to this day. Call me sentimental, but that's how you write a master and a pupil. Seijiro then teaches Kenshin what he assumes is the final move in the Hiten Mitsurugi sword style. Seijiro talks about how there are 9 different targets on the body to look for in swordsmanship. And the move he's teaching Kenshin involves hitting all 9 targets at once, making blocking the attack useless. Hey, if someone ever came charging at me like this, I think I'm gonna be pretty damn shook, not gonna lie. When he finishes explaining how the move takes advantage of the godlike speed of Hiten Mitsurugi, while the screen is all broken up like Goku and Broly, I'm like, Seijiro, I got it, bro. I'ma just be over here. Kenshin is able to learn the move after only seeing it once, and he tries it out against Seijiro, and surprise, surprise, Seijiro beats him, but it's not due to Kenshin making any mistakes. Seijiro explains that Kenshin pulled the move off perfectly. It's just that you need power from multiple striking attacks and weight for charging attacks, and Kenshin is lacking in both. Seijiro then tells Kenshin he can only beat him by using the final attack. That moment when Kenshin realizes that that wasn't the final attack, but he thought that was the whole time, you know you done fucked up, right? You know you done fucked up. The final attack is an evolution of the attack that he just taught Kenshin, and the only way to learn it is by using the attack and overpowering the master's attack. If you're wondering why I'm using the word attack so much, it's because I don't even want to try to butcher these names. I'm sorry, but no. Kenshin takes his stance and you can tell he's at the end of his rope. He can't find a solution to break through Seijiro's attack. In the end, he resorts to allowing the manslayer within him to come out, and you can just see it in his eyes. Kenshin says, "I'm not afraid of death, master, if it means learning the final attack." And this causes Seijiro to stop the lesson and once again call Kenshin a stupid apprentice. And I did the exact same thing. I mean, really, you're here to stop that kind of behavior. Why are you over here trying to amplify it? So Seijiro tells him to search himself through the night, and tomorrow, Kenshin will either learn the final technique or he'll lose his life. I love the dramatic aspect of learning the final technique because when I was thinking back on it, Seijiro and Kenshin both do not hold their punches throughout this training. They have been going all out, and it shows the level of respect that they have for each other, but also the level of respect they have for the Hiton Mitsurugi style. I really love the moment when Seijiro tells Kenshin to take the night before they face off to really search his soul and find what he's missing. Because I personally feel that there comes a point where you just become so proficient at something that things go beyond skill and technique. Think about it. Kenshin learned to do the move flawlessly, only having seen Seijiro do it one time. This isn't an issue of swordsmanship, I think it's an issue in his heart and his soul. And unfortunately, Kenshin isn't able to think of an answer that night. Yikes. The next morning arrives and Seijiro and Kenshin face off with each other. And Seijiro is not happy with the fact that Kenshin couldn't come up with an answer. And this is the first time we get to see him take his cape off, and he looks intense to say the least. And then he says his last duty as Kenshin's master will be to take his life and not teach him the final technique. He looked Kenshin right in the eyes, started walking up to him and said, "Are you prepared?" And when he said that, I was on the edge of my seat. I was like, I can't contain myself. Seijiro and Kenshin holler at the top of their lungs and charge at each other one last time. And right in that moment, Kenshin remembers the rest of the day that he and Seijiro met. Before Seijiro got there and the bandits are finished slaughtering everyone in sight, the only people left are Kenshin and 3 slave women. Kenshin gets in front of the 3 slave women in order to sacrifice himself so that they can survive. But before he knows it, they put him behind them, and they end up being the ones sacrificed for his life. They tell Kenshin he's only a boy and he hasn't had the chance to choose how he'll live his life yet. They tell him he needs to keep on living until he can. And then it hits Kenshin. I need to keep on living. The thing inside of his soul that's been missing and the answer that will allow him to be his master, it's the will to survive. In that moment, the two clash and Kenshin ends up being victorious. And one last time, Seijiro drops some words of wisdom on us. Because you've slain so many people, you've taken your life for granted, even your own. That's what allows a manslayer's heart, which lies deep within your heart, to take over your soul. Even if you use the power of the manslayer for a self-sacrificing purpose, such as to protect those you love or the weak, it's simply one tiny pebble in the never-ending river of time. Live on, Kenshin. That way you'll be able to use the final attack as you please, and you'll never lose to the manslayer within you. Seijiro then falls to the ground, and we see the scar left by Kenshin's ferocious attack. Kenshin carries Seijiro back to his house and he gives him some medicine that he gave Kenshin when he was a boy on the brink of death. The next morning arrives and Seijiro is alive. He mentions that that medicine was something he just threw together that time that Kenshin thought he was dying, which admittedly got a good laugh out of me. Seijiro is always messing with Kenshin, teasing him, being blunt, and pointing out his shortcomings. I said it earlier, but I really do love the relationship between Kenshin and Seijiro. Same goes for this part of Kenshin's story. Every time Rurouni Kenshin is brought up, this is the first section that I think about. I will admit that when I was a kid, I didn't fully understand the meaning of this section, but something about it always grabbed me when I watched it. I realize now that it was Seijiro and Kenshin's relationship. It grabbed me back then, and to this day, it still grabs me when I watch it. I love it. But even though it grabs me, I still have to say that today, things are a little different. Nowadays, what gets me is the lesson and the theme that's attached to this part. The theme is to love yourself, even though you've done things in your life that you're not proud of. Throughout the story up to this point, we know that Kenshin is on a journey of redemption and atonement for the things that he did in his past. And so we constantly see him helping people and even going so far as to put his life on the line if need be. One thing we never see him do is value his own life. And I think that's an essential step to healing yourself. In order to heal and move past the negative things that you've done in your life, you need to accept who you are, accept the things that you've done, but also think about the things you want to do. As I said, Rurouni Kenshin is a series that will always be near and dear to my heart, and I am so happy that they're bringing it back. I hope a new generation is introduced to this series that meant the world to me as a kid, and it still does to this day. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it. Once again, my name's Ryan of Robert Bite, signing off.